Secret Life Upgrade Switch to use when every area of your life feels stuck on repeat. Be careful with this video. Once you see the pattern that's been quietly stalling your progress, you won't be able to go back to, "This is just how I am." Watch it till the end if you're ready for your health, money, work, and relationships to start improving in ways you can actually see and feel. You know the pattern. You're finally making progress in one area, building some momentum, maybe even feeling optimistic for the first time in months. Then something derails it. The workout routine that was going so well gets interrupted by a busy week and never restarts. The creative project you were excited about sits untouched while you handle urgent but unimportant things. The budget you carefully planned gets blown by an unexpected expense that somehow always shows up right when you're gaining ground. The relationship that seemed promising stalls out when real intimacy becomes possible. There's this way that stuckness echoes across everything. Your money situation feels perpetually one step away from real stability, always almost getting ahead but never quite making it over the line. Your health routines start strong, then fizzle after the first setback, leaving you back where you started with less confidence than before. Your work feels like the same week on repeat, busy but not productive, active but not advancing. Your relationships cycle through the same conversations without ever seeming to deepen or resolve anything. Maybe you're the person who starts strong, then burns out because the initial burst of energy isn't sustainable long-term. Or perhaps you're the opposite, researching and planning endlessly, but never quite feeling ready to begin, waiting for conditions that never align perfectly. You might be the one who says yes to everyone else's priorities because disappointing others feels worse than disappointing yourself, then wonders why you never have energy for what actually matters to you. You could be the person who knows exactly what you should be doing, but somehow always finds reasons to do something else instead. The life loops that feel like who you are. These aren't random setbacks or evidence that improvement isn't meant for you. They're life loops, patterns so embedded in your daily routine that they feel like permanent features of who you are, instead of learned responses to old fears about change, success, or having more when you're used to having less. Each week feels like a remix of the same story. New circumstances, same internal conversation. Different opportunities, identical hesitation about whether you're ready or deserve what you're reaching for. It's like repainting a room while all the furniture stays in the same place. The colors might look different, but you're still navigating the same cramped space, still bumping into the same obstacles that keep you from moving freely. You might switch strategies, download new apps, even change environments, but somehow you end up recreating similar outcomes because the underlying system didn't change. The reason surface changes don't create lasting transformation is that they're not addressing what generates those outcomes in the first place. When someone trades one form of procrastination for another, when they replace one distraction with a more sophisticated version of the same avoidance, when they swap one excuse for a different limitation that feels more reasonable, they've changed the packaging but not the pattern. Real change happens at the level of the operating system. It's about updating the beliefs, habits, and automatic responses that create those day-to-day outcomes across all areas of life. But your brain isn't working against you when it defaults back to familiar patterns. It's doing what brains do, which is conserve energy and stick to routes it knows. Every time you respond to challenge or opportunity in the same way, whether that's overthinking until the moment passes, starting strong then gradually losing steam, or waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive, you're strengthening neural pathways that make those responses more automatic. When pressure builds, your nervous system reaches for the program it's run before, even when that program consistently produces results you don't want. The perfectionism that prevents starting, the people-pleasing that leaves no energy for yourself, the urgency that makes everything feel more complicated than it needs to be, the avoidance that turns small tasks into overwhelming projects. These were strategies that helped you navigate earlier versions of your life. They made sense when they formed. But strategies that outlive their usefulness become invisible barriers to the outcomes you're actually trying to create. The moment where transformation actually begins. There's a moment that changes everything, though. It's when you catch yourself mid-pattern and realize you're watching it happen rather than just being swept along by it. Maybe you're reaching for your phone instead of taking the walk you planned, and suddenly you can see the avoidance clearly. Maybe you're about to over-explain a simple boundary, and you pause, recognizing the people-pleasing pattern. Maybe you're postponing an important email again, and you notice the fear disguised as needing to research just one more thing. That awareness isn't small or insignificant. It's the first genuine break in the loop because for the first time, you're conscious enough to choose differently. Most people dismiss these moments because they feel so ordinary, so undramatic. There's no fanfare or sudden clarity about everything. Just a simple recognition that this is the pattern happening again, and maybe it doesn't have to. But that microsecond of space between impulse and action is where transformation actually begins. Here's what shifts when you start seeing recurring patterns as information instead of permanent features of who you are. Instead of, "This is just how I am," the question becomes, "What was this trying to protect me from?" Every repeated outcome becomes data about what felt necessary in an earlier chapter, but might not be serving you anymore. The loop isn't evidence that better outcomes aren't meant for you or that change is impossible. It's feedback. It's your life system's way of saying that the current approach has been outgrown and something new is ready to emerge. When that reframe settles in, you start noticing subtle signs that a different way of being is already developing. You sleep better one night without changing anything specific about your routine. You answer a message more directly without the usual overthinking. You have a conversation that stays honest without forcing depth or managing how you're received. You place a small boundary and keep your evening plans instead of automatically accommodating someone else's schedule. A random refund appears in your account. You clean your workspace for 5 minutes and your thinking feels clearer. You send one email you've been avoiding and get a surprisingly positive response. You take a short walk instead of scrolling and return with energy you didn't expect. You say no to one commitment that drains you and discover you have bandwidth for something that actually matters. These aren't dramatic shifts, but they share something important. They feel lighter to act on than the efforts you use to force. There's less resistance, less internal negotiation about whether you're ready or deserve good things. How small alignments compound into real change. Watch what happens when these small alignments start compounding. You move your phone out of the bedroom and sleep better. Better sleep means you wake up with more energy. More energy means you tackle the small task you've been postponing. Completing that task gives you momentum to send the message you've been drafting for weeks. The response to that message opens a door you didn't know existed. You honor one boundary with someone who's been taking advantage of your time and suddenly have space to focus on what you've been neglecting. That focus leads to progress on a project that's been stalled for months. Progress on the project builds confidence to have a conversation you've been avoiding. The conversation clarifies something that's been consuming mental energy for weeks, freeing you to think about other possibilities. Each change feels manageable in isolation, but together they create momentum that carries you into entirely different territory. The same opportunities that used to overwhelm you start feeling approachable. Work that used to drain you starts energizing you because it aligns with what you actually want to be doing. Relationships that used to require constant management start feeling easier because you're no longer performing or fixing or managing everyone's emotions. This momentum builds because alignment creates efficiency. When you're working with your natural rhythms instead of against them, everything requires less force. You're not constantly managing how others perceive you or predicting what outcome will make you feel worthy. You're not forcing results or talking yourself into opportunities that feel wrong. You're not performing a version of success you think you should want, instead of moving toward what actually energizes you. The backwards approach. Most people take. This is where most people have been approaching improvement backwards. They've been trying to control outcomes, manage every variable, predict and prevent every possible setback or disappointment. They obsess over perfect timing, ideal conditions, and getting everything lined up before they start. But outcomes are downstream from systems. They're what naturally flows from the inputs you design and repeat consistently over time. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, you become someone who creates momentum with imperfect action. Instead of hoping external circumstances will align, you become someone who designs internal conditions that make progress feel natural. Instead of trying to force specific results, you become someone who shapes the system that produces results organically. The focus shifts from managing the external world to creating internal conditions that make better outcomes more likely. Your brain has what neuroscientists call the reticular activating system, an attention filter that decides what information reaches conscious awareness. Think of it like a search function that highlights whatever you've programmed it to notice. When you're considering buying a certain car, you suddenly see that model everywhere. When you learn a new word, you start hearing it in conversations you wouldn't have noticed it in before. The information was always there, but your attention wasn't tuned to receive it. When your priorities begin to shift, your attention filter shifts with it. You start noticing opportunities that were invisible when you were focused on what wasn't working. The chronic perfectionist starts seeing places where good enough actually moves things forward. The chronic people pleaser starts recognizing when boundaries serve everyone better. The chronic procrastinator starts noticing that small actions often lead to unexpected momentum. Same environment, different perception. What changes when you step into the identity of someone who doesn't just hope for better outcomes, but designs conditions where they become likely? Someone who doesn't just react to circumstances, but creates systems that generate sustainable progress. Someone who doesn't just chase individual improvements, but builds an integrated life where different areas support each other. You stop being someone things happen to and start being someone who participates consciously in what unfolds. Change the inputs. Let better find you. When the filter shifts, exits appear. Small alignments free large outcomes. Design the day that welcomes the life you want. Stop chasing, start arranging. How this transformation unfolds in real life. This transformation often looks unremarkable from the outside, but feels profound from within. Someone retires a commitment that's been draining their energy for months and suddenly has space to think clearly about what they actually want. They start sleeping better because they're not carrying the stress of obligations that don't fit. With better sleep comes steadier energy throughout the day. With steadier energy comes the bandwidth to send 2 messages they've been avoiding for weeks. One message leads to a conversation that clarifies a misunderstanding that's been consuming mental space. The other leads to an opportunity they weren't expecting. They ship a modest offer they've been refining instead of waiting for it to be perfect. The offer gets a positive response, which gives them confidence to accept a social invitation they would normally decline. At the gathering, they meet someone who shares their values and has resources they need for their next project. Within weeks, they're experiencing visible improvement across multiple areas. A client who fits their skills and pays fairly. A social rhythm that energizes rather than drains them. Mornings that feel steady instead of chaotic. Work that moves forward instead of spinning in place. From the outside, it might look sudden or lucky. From the inside, it's the natural result of tuned attention and aligned action. The opportunities were probably always there, but they couldn't perceive the connections when their system was calibrated for struggle and scarcity. You're not waiting for permission to step into this version of yourself. You're not waiting for ideal conditions or perfect timing or external validation before you start moving toward what energizes you. The shift is happening right now, in the space between recognizing the old patterns and choosing something different. Every time you take the action that feels slightly uncomfortable but right, every time you honor a boundary that matters, every time you tell the truth instead of what you think people want to hear, you're building the system that attracts different outcomes. If you made it this far, you're already in the shift. The fact that these words resonate means your attention filter is already changing. Life changing for the better isn't some distant event waiting to happen. It's the natural expression of a life system that's been quietly reorganizing around who you're becoming. It shows up as conversations that feel easier, work that flows better, relationships that require less maintenance, and a sense that you're finally moving in the direction you've been trying to go. Keep tuning your attention. Keep making choices from possibility rather than fear. Keep designing inputs that support the life you're creating rather than the limitations you're leaving behind. The system is already working with you. You just needed to remember how to work with it.